Hey, it's Clip of the Day time where Buck Sexton and I pick out the best hot take, the most fun that we had for all of you to be able to experience on the show.
That's right, and this segment is brought to you by ExpressVPN, which is the virtual private network that we trust to protect our online data.
When I use ExpressVPN, the big tech companies can't see my IP address, my identity is anonymized, and my data's encrypted. That gives me the absolute maximum protection.
And what I like is how easy it is to use. Just download the app to your phone or computer, and you're protected. So visit expressvpn.com/patriot today, and you'll get an extra 3 months free, or you can click on the link in the description below.
That's expressvpn.com/patriot, and now it's time for the clip of the day.
What's going to be in the huge Biden bill that Congress may be passing here soon? We have some indications of what's going to be in it. I want to talk to you about that. Welcome back to the Clay and Buck Show. You have Senator Joe Manchin, who has been one of two bulwarks against the insane spending of their fellow Democrats. Now, keep in mind, we're still talking about a whole lot of additional spending over the next 10 years after you already had a $1.9 trillion Democrat rescue package passed earlier this year, trillions and trillions of spending going on during COVID, inflation getting to be the kind of problem that not even the Democrats can ignore. It's real. People see it. They feel it. They know. Plus, you've got supply chain snarls, millions of unfilled jobs, and a lot of anxiety, particularly in major cities across the country, about what the winter's going to be like with COVID continuing to have pretty heavy numbers. Now, Manchin is closer to $1.5 trillion top line. Biden had a meeting with him recently trying to pitch him on, let's get it up to $2 trillion. So, as we've known all along, they're haggling over the price. And it's going to be between $1.5 and $2 trillion. And the Democrats will, I believe, pass something here very soon. And then they'll be talking about what a huge success it is and how Biden's amazing and all the rest of it. So get ready for that. But what's some of the stuff that's actually in this? Well, they are talking about a tax on the wealthiest individuals in the country that will go after their holdings in the stock market. So this should be unrealized. So it's not stock you've sold, it's stock you have. And for the very, very wealthiest, not clear exactly how they would implement this. And as we know, the devil is in the details. But here is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen speaking about this proposed tax that would allegedly pay for the Build Back Better Act. Play 12.
I wouldn't call that a wealth tax, but it would help get at capital gains, which are an extraordinarily large part of the incomes of the wealthiest individuals. And right now, escape taxation until they're realized, and often they're unrealized, and at death benefit from so-called step-up of basis. So it's not a wealth tax, but a tax on unrealized capital gains of exceptionally wealthy individuals.
It's not a wealth tax, Clay, just a tax on really wealthy people's stock transactions, or not even transactions, stock holdings.
Here's my problem with it, okay? Let me start with the big picture problem. Once you start taxing wealthy people's unrealized capital gains, eventually you open the door to taxing a lot of people out there who aren't anywhere near as wealthy's unrealized capital gains. Let's not exaggerate here. This is a radical change in the way that we are taxing people. And so the idea that we're suddenly going to implement this is, I think, a problem, because what have we found out about anything that the government implements that allows them to get more money? Eventually, they need more money, and they expand the overall number of people that can be impacted by this. That's problem number one. Problem number two is this is incredibly complicated. It's in general focused on the 700 wealthiest Americans, okay? So, and for people out there, a lot of you may not even spend much time thinking about capital gains. A capital gain, let's say that you bought a stock for $10, right? Let's say you bought a stock for $10 and that stock then increases to $20. You would owe a tax on the $10 to $20 when you sell that stock. If you have not sold that stock, then technically you have not realized a capital gain. It is only what's called a paper profit. So effectively what the government is doing is they are saying they are going to tax paper profits. That is unrealized dollars that are essentially sitting in your stockholder accounts. Okay, so here's the complicating factor with this. Only the 700 richest people are being impacted by this, Buck. We are designing a tax plan on the fly in short order. Biden wants it done before he leaves the country in the next few days, 6 days from now. Who would you rather bet on, Buck? The 700 wealthiest Americans being advised by the greatest tax attorney and accountants that exist anywhere in the world, being able to find loopholes to avoid taxation, or the federal government bureaucrats operating on a strict timetable, trying to come up with a radical and as yet never implemented before policy to tax the wealthiest among us? I am betting, Buck, on the cadre of brilliant people that are going to be advising the billionaires. This tax is not going to work. It's going to be a mess. We're going to spend years in litigation over whether it's even constitutional to tax unrealized capital gains. And in the meantime, we're already going to have spent that money, likely driving up substantially more deficits. This is not a zero-cost basis, as Joe Biden continues to argue. I think we are buying a lawsuit, and I think we are buying a mess here as the American public, and I think we are setting an awful precedent by trying to tax unrealized paper profits, even if it's among the wealthiest, because eventually it's going to trickle down to a lot more of us.
Well, they've also done this overseas, Clay. They've tried a wealth tax, and to your point about what happens, the super rich evade it. They find a way. Or they just start. People say, "Oh no, they can't because it'll be so straightforward. You have to pay this fee." Well, then they'll just invest in real estate. And now what are you going to do? You're going to force someone to sell the property that they own. You're going to force them to sell the apartment building they're an investor in because of the unrealized upside gains. They will move their money around as they can because they have the super rich, which is what they're really talking about here, have not only the greatest army of accountants and lawyers imaginable, but also have the most options for where to put their money here in the States and all over the world. The Europeans tried this. I mean, the French had a wealth tax. It was between 1.5 and 1.8% of fortunes over 13 million euros. And guess what? It never got to be about more than 1% of tax revenue in France. People repatriated, they left, they moved to other countries, they moved their money to other countries. So as a socialist wealth redistribution scheme, it was just a lot of hot air, essentially. But what's even more concerning in this country is if you look at the history, and this is really instructive, look at the history of income tax in America, everybody. It started out as, this is just on super rich people. That was how they sold it in the beginning of the 20th century. This is just for the super rich. It's never going to come after you. We'll use duties and excises and customs and other things to fund the federal government. Oh, no. Now you get that nice chunk taken out of your biweekly paycheck, all based on it'll just be on the ultra rich promise from about 100 years ago, by the way, a little over 100 years ago now.